Thank you all for such a lovely discussion. And I think most of what I wanted to talk has already been talked about because I had so many intelligent women talking before me. I have hardly any material to talk, and I was just thinking maybe my lecture would be a revision class rather than anything else. But because the topic does overlap, and most of them have done a fantastic job of collecting all the information that's around there on the net and otherwise. So this talk is on complications of diabetes using the gender lens. And the questions that we need to ask is there a gender difference for which complications? What infections are more common? Are there any differences in acute complications? And does it impact management? So is there a difference? I think most of the speakers who talked before me have shown you all these data saying that definitely there is a higher mortality due to diabetes in women than in men. And this risk mainly comes from the cardiovascular risk, which is much higher. And also there is not only cardiovascular risk, but there is increased risk of peripheral vascular disease, which is again very much connected to cardiovascular risk. We all know that people with peripheral vascular disease die of myocardial infarction rather than anything else. And so this connection has already been established that women with diabetes definitely have a higher mortality than men. So that is underlined, I think, several times in this session. And I think, I don't know whether this slide also was projected, but you can see this forest plot, which is showing an increased relative risk in women for coronary artery disease, for stroke, for vascular dementia, for chronic kidney disease, and end-stage renal disease, all of them. Of course, it is talking of cancer and all, but our talk is mainly on vascular complications. So we know that women are at a higher risk of any of the complications that are mentioned here across several studies. So why is there a difference? I think this has also been discussed that women have a higher prevalence of abdominal obesity, hypertension, and all the other risk factors, which actually go into the making of an increased cardiovascular risk. And there are differences in the endothelial function between sexes. And this is what translates into an increased risk, apart from all these risk factors that are mentioned, and increased vulnerability to the risk factors, apart from the prevalence of these risk factors, is what makes them more susceptible. Also, there is a disparity in the treatment and the treatment response to how we treat hypertension and dyslipidemia. Like we say, more metabolic deterioration is needed before women become diabetic. So as you can see in this figure, where the men become diabetic and where the women become diabetic, before the women become diabetic, they already have clustered enough risk factors. And so that is why when they come with the cardiovascular risk, they already have 4 or 5 risk factors before they become diabetic, which makes them more and more susceptible. Of course, there are women-specific factors apart from the general factors that we know, like polycystic ovary disease, reproductive endocrine disorders, menopause, pregnancy complications, GDM, all of which have been discussed earlier. So we know that each of them predisposes to one particular, or more specifically to one particular risk factors. Polycystic ovary predisposes to type 2 DM, and pregnancy-induced hypertension can continue like that. Eclampsia is known to continue. GDM can last for a longer time beyond the pregnancy. And of course, a preterm birth, which will also translate into the diabetes in the next generation. So women-specific risk factors make them more susceptible because apart from gender risk factors, these are also, it's like a double whammy for these women. Now, like we said, not only that they are susceptible to risk factors, but the effect of the risk factors is also compounded in women. And we know that even in the UKPDS, in diabetic women, the percentage of hypertension was much more than that of men. But a 10 millimeter increase in systolic blood pressure increases the cardiovascular disease by 30% in women as compared to 14% in men. So not only the prevalence is more, but the impact of the risk factor on cardiovascular disease is more. Same thing happens with the lipid profile, which is also skewed, especially in postmenopausal women, and the translation of obesity into various complications like gestational diabetes, hypertension, etc., all of which translate into a higher ASCVD risk and an increased stroke risk. This was already mentioned that menopause and early menopause is an important risk factor for the development of cardiac disease and also contributes to the cardiovascular death. So is there a difference in the micro and macrovascular complications of diabetes? Is there a difference between these two? If you ask this question, we know that the macrovascular complications are cardiac, strokes, and peripheral vascular disease. And cardiac complications has already been mentioned. There is a 5-fold increase in fatal MI as shown in the MONICA and the CORA study. And we know that definitely women have much more cardiovascular complications than men. They've been underlined many times. Now, the INTERHEART study is what began this discussion that the diabetes and myocardial infarction among women compared to men, there was a stronger association. And like we said, not only premenopausal women, they lose the protection of the hormones when they get diabetes. Also, following an MI, there's a recurrence rate in diabetic women is much more. It's double than what happens in men. So that is why not only you get MI once, but you can get MI twice, thrice if you're a woman. This was also being mentioned that because of the lack of hormonal protection, they get it earlier than in men. But what happens is many times the symptoms of women are ignored because they are quite atypical. Atypical angina is more common in women than in men. We had patients like this. Last week, I saw a 60-year-old lady who came with one vague chest pain and who was dismissed as nothing but psychosomatic, but turned out to be a coronary artery disease. So women are not taken seriously. The description of the angina in them is not typical. So sometimes ignored because one ECG is normal, everybody says you're normal, but the angiogram does show that there is a blockade. The response to antiplatelet drugs is also not as good as in women as in men. The incidence of peripheral vascular disease is more, and cardiac when you do the stress imaging, when you do the thallium, you find that the ischemic area is more in women, and the prevalence and severity of the coronary artery disease is more. And if you do a CCIMT for the carotids, again it is more. Like we said, because of the clustering of the metabolic syndrome risk factors, all these are more in women, but the recognition and the response and the associations are all much more severe in women. Cardiovascular syndrome X is what we call as microvascular angina. This is also mentioned. So women are the people who more often get microvascular angina with diabetes. Diabetes itself causes microvascular angina, but women and diabetes are a very good combination for getting this, where you do the coronary angiogram and you find normal epicardial coronaries, but because of the small vessel involvement, these people get angina. This is common in peri and postmenopausal women. And MINOCA, which is the myocardial infarction with normal coronaries, is also more common in women. And these people tend to have an MI without warning. This could be because of spasm or myocardial bridging and many other causes, all of which are more common in women. So the recognition of these the presence of ischemic heart disease itself is difficult. The presentation is odd. The coronaries can be normal, like we said in MINOCA and like we said in microvascular angina, all of which make it difficult for recognition and treatment. Plus, the response to treatment is not as good. Heart failure is another condition which is common in women compared to men in a ratio of 2:1. It's a double risk for a diabetic woman to have heart failure than for a man to have heart failure. Now, why is this common? Why is this happening? Because of various factors. We have the role of the genes, we have the role of the smaller anthropometry, the estrogen, the higher inflammation, and the risk factor clustering. All these translate into changes in the myocardial compliance. So that is why they are often prone to heart failure with preserved ejection fraction rather than reduced ejection fraction, and translates into cardiac metabolism problems where there is a prominent lipid metabolism and less apoptosis and LV mass is preserved. So there is a thickening of the LV mass, which is correlated with myocardial oxygen demand and CV death and cardiac failure, of course, and vascular dysfunction because, like we said, endothelial dysfunction and abnormal ventricular atrial coupling. So all these are microvascular dysfunction. So all of these, the myocardial structure, the cardiac metabolism, and the vascular dysfunction, all of them predispose to women having heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. This was also already told that women have a higher risk, 27% greater risk for stroke, and the UKPD has also found the stroke fatality to be twice, not only the prevalence, but the fatality to be higher in women. Several meta-analyses have confirmed this fact and showing an odds ratio in women to be much higher than an odds ratio in men. And possibly it's higher even in type 1 diabetes, apart from having type 2 diabetes also. So in summary, if you look at the macrovascular disease, for type 1 diabetes, we don't have much data except for the stroke. Definitely, the coronary artery disease definitely increased in women, and relative risk is there in the women after adjusting for all risk factors, and it causes major cardiovascular events. And peripheral vascular disease is again an ignored complication, especially in Asian women, because these people have severe symptoms of PAD accompanied by uncontrolled risk factors. This is also common in women, and with the BMI and the systolic pressure being independent risk factors for peripheral vascular disease, peripheral arterial disease, and of course stroke. So all three complications, all three macrovascular complications are much more common in women. Now coming to the microvascular complications, it's a different scenario. Most of the microvascular complications like peripheral neuropathy are more common in men than in women. And it has also been said that in younger diabetics also, it was found that the male sex predisposes to more peripheral neuropathy than the female sex. So I think we can be happy that some complications are less in us than in the men. Though I wouldn't say that the men should have those complications, but anyway. But there are studies which do not agree with this concept that diabetic peripheral neuropathy is more common in men, and says that more studies are needed to answer this question. This is again a study which talked about peripheral neuropathy in men and women, and found not much difference. So going on to retinopathy, retinopathy is definitely more common in men than in women, especially when you have the diabetic proliferative retinopathy is much more, and suggesting that the male sex may be a definite factor. Even in an Indian study, it was found that males had more diabetic retinopathy than in females. When you come to the nephropathy, microalbuminuria is actually more common in women to begin with, and the decline in GFR is faster in women. But when you look at the death, okay, this is a study which talked about those who are on hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis and whether they are diabetic or not. And when they looked at the cardiovascular mortality, we all know that people with CKD, we know through the involvement of the Klotho and other factors, the FGF23, we know that the vascular disease is what is going to kill many people with CKD. And so again, women with diabetes and CKD actually have more cardiovascular deaths, which is in keeping with the rest of the CKD population also. But women do have more cardiovascular deaths, especially if they have CKD. So there is a difference here. And when you look at microvascular complications, again, this is another study which came out in 2020, showing that men tend to have more microvascular complications, especially microalbuminuria, and multiple microvascular complications are more common in men. And they said that probably there is not much deterioration in women. And this is another study which shows that women with type 2 diabetes are not disproportionately associated. So again, saying that we don't have a disadvantage here, that women do not have much microvascular complications as compared to men. So most studies say men either have more microvascular complications or we are almost equal to them. The recent studies have been telling that there is parity, but there is not an increased risk of microvascular complications in women except for the CKD component. So summing up again, the vascular complications in type 1 diabetes, the microvascular complications, men have more neuropathy, more retinopathy, more nephropathy, but the deterioration happens in women and then they could die of cardiovascular disease. When you look at the microvascular complication type 2 DM, again more retinopathy, nephropathy, and neuropathy. But again, the end stage CKD, women have more cardiovascular mortality. So to sum it up, it's probably men have more microvascular or almost equal, and women definitely have more macrovascular. So here we are definitely at a big risk. Women have a big risk, but the microvascular is not so sure. And jury is still out on that question. One of the most peculiar complications that we get in diabetic women is the urinary tract infections, the genital infections, which are definitely more common in women, more prone in different stages of life, because in young women, the honeymoon cystitis comes in during pregnancy, and in the elderly because of prolapse. And at every stage of life, the woman is at a disadvantage as far as UTI is concerned, and monomicrobial infections are common in most of them. The predisposing factors are common in all diabetics: hyperglycemia, glycosuria, decreased humoral and cellular immunity. But the shorter urethra is where the woman is more predisposed. Reduced bladder emptying and autonomic neuropathy are again common in everybody. Now, UTI in women is a spectrum. We can get asymptomatic or cystitis or pyelonephritis, severe urosepsis, going on to emphysematous pyelonephritis, renal abscess, and septic shock. So you can begin at asymptomatic and end in septic shock. But all of them are definitely more common in women. So asymptomatic bacteriuria, the problem is that we should have in women 2 consecutive specimens of the same bacterial species of 1 lakh colony count. Only then we say that the patient has asymptomatic bacteriuria. And incidence of UTI as such is 15% greater in women than in men, and as high as 40 to 50% after the age of 80, which is probably in the very elderly. But what is definitely important to know is that bacteriuria, the growth of an organism, is definitely more common in women as compared to men, especially over the age of 60 years. And emphysematous pyelonephritis, we have seen so many cases because we work in a tertiary care institution. There are so many women who have come to us with emphysematous pyelonephritis. Previously, we used to do a nephrectomy or a drainage, but most of the time now we are able to manage with DJ stenting and antibiotics. So most of this is a women-centric disease. Asymptomatic pyelonephritis definitely occurs more in women in a ratio of 6:1. Blood culture is positive. This is where it goes wrong for most of the women, because they have an emphysematous pyelonephritis, but they come with sepsis and septic shock because they are automatically letting these organisms go into the blood, and blood culture positivity is almost 50%. So it's very, very high. And these patients come sick, they come with sepsis, septic shock, and this is definitely more common, especially in an elderly woman with UTI. This is one of the complications that we dread. And the prognosis depends on the stage. Right now, I think we have seen in the last 1 year, I would have seen about 5 to 10 patients with emphysematous pyelonephritis, out of which about 6 may be women. And many of them did well because of the higher antibiotics that we use, and we drain the pus through a DJ stenting. Sometimes we have had a nephrostomy done also. Now, asymptomatic bacteria is always a topic of debate. Because it's more common in diabetic patients, ranging from 8 to 26%. But we know that 2 to 7% of pregnant women also have asymptomatic bacteriuria. And as many as 70% of diabetic women have ASB and have accompanying pyuria. Now, pyuria doesn't mean an organism. So we cannot take the pyuria seriously, but the asymptomatic bacteriuria, we have to check whether we need to treat or not. Now, that's a question that's been gone back and forth over the years, over decades. But now it is known that diabetic women with asymptomatic bacteriuria up to 3 years found that the bacteria persists or recurs in most women. It is benign and you can hardly eradicate it. So many times we will find that people are treated for this asymptomatic bacteriuria, but when they do the culture again, it's again positive. So what do you do? How many times do you treat? So all the other studies have shown that people unnecessarily receive multiple courses of antibiotics, and this causes antibiotic resistance. So no need to treat except in specific situations, except in pregnancy in women. Now, in women, definitely ASB has to be treated. In fact, 1 urine culture is advised in most women in the 3rd month. And because if you do not treat this, most of them develop symptomatic UTI. There is an increased risk of pyelonephritis because of relaxation due to the estrogen and the tendency to accumulate urine, stasis is there, and it can cause preterm births, low birth weight, and treatment definitely improves outcomes. So you don't want this woman with pregnancy to deteriorate either into an UTI or a pyelonephritis, and you don't want the child to be affected. So that is why in pregnancy, there is no doubt that asymptomatic bacteriuria should be treated, but there is no evidence that other diabetic women who are having this should be treated at all. Now, vaginal infections are again more common in women, and most of the time the organisms are candida. Different types of candida are grown from the vaginal infections in diabetic women, and candiduria can come. Most often when we go to the ICUs, we find women who are on catheters, who have been there, and then you send a urine culture, it comes as candida. Now, many of the times it's a colonizer. Unless it is symptomatic, there is no need to treat if it is asymptomatic. But if it's symptomatic, then treatment with fluconazole is important in these diabetic women. Now, SGLT2 inhibitors, again, we have had patients, even when I've had experience with people who come back with, vaginal candidiasis, and then they close the door of the room and then slowly whisper in the ear that actually I have a candidal infection, I'm having itching in the perianal region, etc. And this is something that we should look out for all patients with on SGLT2 inhibitors, because there is definitely an increased incidence, and better to avoid once they get better to avoid it in future. And several studies have addressed this problem. This is a study which is talking about dapagliflozin and the presence of vaginal candidiasis, and definitely it is higher. So this is something that we should ask all our patients who are on SGLT2. Now, coming to the acute complications of diabetes, DKA, it is known that women have a higher incidence of DKA and higher incidence of eating disorders, both of which are more common in women than in men. But when you look at the non-cardiovascular deaths in diabetic women, it's mainly infections. So that's what we should remember. So when we look at the complications of diabetes through the gender lens, we have to look at vascular complications, we have to look at infective complications, and especially the urinary infections can be killers, because they can break into sepsis and they can cause septic shock. Now, the ground realities of how we treat women and using the gender lens for this also, again, this was also projected and discussed by a previous speaker. This is a Lancet study which talks about sex disparities in diabetes and how to bridge the gap. We know that there are higher socioeconomic barriers, especially in India. I'm sure many women do not go to the doctor themselves. They have to be taken by the men, and the men have to find the time to take them, and these women will not complain. And so, and the money that is spent on a woman is accounted for very differently than the money that is spent on a man, especially in the lower socioeconomic status. So definitely there are socioeconomic barriers, and opportunities of physical activity tend to be less. When you ask the woman, do you go for a walk? You will find that many people say, no, I don't have the time, I'm doing housework. And they don't focus on themselves. They don't give themselves even 15 minutes of time to go for a walk. Especially in India, this is very, very common in all our practice. And of course, cultural factors, because some people say even going for a walk is considered something, culturally wrong. I have seen women who say that people will ask me, where are you going? This kind of thing. So in rural areas, this is a problem, because a woman walking without a direction is considered going in the wrong way. Now, access to healthcare is less screening, less access, poor adherence to therapy. Like we said, women treat themselves last, put themselves last on the priority list of any family. So they do not adhere to therapy. They forget their drugs. The monitoring is less frequent. The women don't monitor their sugar so frequently, nor for any complications. Worse consequences are there. So do the women get good care after stroke also? There is an inferior health-related quality of life after stroke in women than in men. So putting together all this, if you look at this, do we treat them well? Let us start with the man and a woman starting with diabetes, not with diabetes, normal glucose tolerance, exposure to risk factors. Women may have a longer diagnostic delay than in men. Then annual screening of vascular complications, women will never come. You tell them, have you undergone a ECG? Oh, no, I have not undergone, only sugars. That's their usual answer. And the cardiovascular complications, unfortunately, are more in them. The primary prevention and secondary prevention are often neglected. People do not even take one tablet of aspirin, how much ever you tell them. And lifestyle and education is not really as good as in women as in men. And the pharmacological interventions are also not taken seriously, and sometimes they do not respond and they are less adherent. So putting together all this, women lose their hormonal advantage when they get diabetes, and so they are prone for all kinds of complications, more clustering of CV risk, more CV mortality. All macrovascular complications are more common. Infections, urinary and genital, are more common, and access to healthcare and utilization is poor. So I just want to end by saying there's a long way to go and a lot can be done. And I'm sure most of the women who are talking now are doing a lot for other women who have diabetes, and that's the way forward. Thank you all for a patient hearing.